Good morning, everyone. Welcome to XT Summit. The energy is already going up and up, and we'll take it to another level with all the sessions going on. So, a brief about me. I was born in the 90s. I say this all the time because that was like a good time for me. We didn't used to have like computers and different machines or information at our hands, which also meant like there was no information overload, and you just had to go to library to look at something or like get some information. But having said that, I also was quite lucky to get a computer at a really young age, and I started playing computer games. And why I say this, because I kind of developed interest into playing games and like coding for a particular game, and that's where after like few years, I have become a developer now. And then I kind of love code, and also I live for coding. What do I do now? I'm like a full life cycle engineer and working in a retail domain for UK giant. And what I mean by full cycle engineer is like a front end developer plus knowledge on like GraphQL, other layers, deployments, etc. I also have some interest in AI. This is kind of a big dream of me of like able to ride or like sit in a self-driving car. So yeah, that's what I'm currently looking at. Uh, Hope you remember me. I had also spoken in XT Summit 2017 with my good friend Karthik, and the talk was on self-driving cars. It was quite a fancy one. This time, coming back with again like more energy and more enthusiasm, I'm back with the topic on GraphQL. So just to start with and put some context, I know like GraphQL is building really well in these days, and like people are jumping on the GraphQL bandwagon like every time. Most clients and most people wants to go to GraphQL as a data aggregator solution for the different apps and different consumers. And while you have already built the GraphQL layer, I want to present you a checklist of 3 items. First being scaling, second being securing, and third being managing. And how you kind of do a check on all these items so that your GraphQL layer is tight and secure. Particularly, how do you move from proof of concept to a production ready application? Okay, so let's move on. Uh, what I actually mean by that is, let's say this is your application. I kind of use this synonym from using a mango, and this is how you want to present to your consumers, and then consumer will end up like eating it or like consuming it. But while you're also doing that, there will be few external entities acting onto it. Those may be security concerns, those may be performance concerns, etc. And you don't actually want your app or your application to like spoil in this manner. Okay, enough of context setting. Let's move on to the proof of concept. So let's say there is an event going on known as YT Summit, and you have already seen the XT Summit app or the XT Summit website, and YT Summit would also want to build a similar website. And few of the features of this website would be like a description page or a landing page. It would also have a schedule of talks, something like this, and looks like I am also talking at the event. And the third feature which you would probably want is also a reviews and rating feature. So let's say I did a talk and then people had to rate it based on stars and based on comments. They would have the feature to do that as well. Okay, so from a GraphQL perspective, what do you kind of add into the data and the design? So this looks like the first iteration of your schema. This will nothing but have very few like nodes into it. First being a speaker will have ID, name, bio, few like common things. There'll be another node known as talk, and then talk will be useful for listing the number of talks, the different types of talks, and then it will have a connection to the speaker. Let's go to our iteration 2. This is nothing but we are supporting the reviews feature now, and then we also introduce a review type and a user type. Users are nothing but people who can log in from an external standpoint and then put a review or rating onto the top. And this is how our stitched up schema will look like. So I'll be talking about stitching up schemas in the later part of the talk, but yeah, this is how our schema will look like. And let's try how our queries are performing. So this is for the iteration 1 where we had speakers and talks. So it took around 268 milliseconds, as you can see here. I'll quickly use a highlighter. The iteration 2 where we introduced reviews, it took around 820 milliseconds. So you can see like that there is like bit of performance degradation, but it's still fine at the moment. But what happened when you stitched up the schema? It kind of ended up using a lot of bandwidth, and it took a lot of time of around 1.5 seconds. So it looks like our app is not performing well, and we need to take a step back and see what's going on. So the first step to kind of going into deep is nothing but you visualize what you have built. And there is a really good tool called GraphQL Voyager, and it gives you a connected nodes kind of thing or thing where you can visualize everything you look for. And it looks like our app is good. There are no like unwanted connections anywhere. So that the first part is done. Second part into it is nothing but using a tool like graphical, or this is a screenshot from the Apollo's tool, where you can actually dive into different aspects of the query, and it will actually let you know how much time each part of it took. So let's say if you ran the reviews query, the first part took like 280 milliseconds, the second part subsequent one took 360, and so on. All right, that brings up to the first checklist, is nothing but how do you improve the scale, how to scale your app, and how to improve its performance. So performance is nothing but achieved using like very common techniques and very easy ones. There are like two types of techniques which you can follow in GraphQL perspective, and that is nothing but caching your data, and second one being caching your queries. So let's quickly look at what I mean by that. So first part is like caching of data, and that is where we introduce data loaders. And the concept behind data loaders is like, instead of piping everything and then doing one request at a time, let's say in this graph, in this illustration, what if we kind of take all these requests into one chunk and process them async at the same time, something like this. So let's say if you are requesting for reviews, for first 3 reviews for a particular talk, and then you kind of end up having the same reviewer, you kind of are on the benefit of getting the data or getting the response in one go. The second part being caching of queries. So this is the syntax provided by Apollo, and they have introduced kind of this directive of cache control on, like, you can use it on nodes and different properties of the nodes. And what it actually means is you can cache few parts of a query which are not frequently updated. So something like speaker. So speaker won't change, right? So let's say you cache it for like 10 seconds or 10 minutes. Similarly, the image of the speaker would like never change, or probably it will change very rarely. So kind of cache it for, let's say, an hour or something like that. And what it actually does is it sends the cache control header like this, and along with the e tag, so that the browser knows when to send this header back to the server. And what it actually means is whenever your server receives this request and it kind of looks for the cache control header, it kind of serves the cache data instead of going into a resolver. Going on to the next part of caching, full response. So you would have probably seen this kind of a picture where we call it like taxonomy, and it's nothing but different categories, different sub departments on an e-commerce website. And this is particularly good for a given store ID, and it doesn't quite change according to on a daily basis. So what we can actually do is we can cache the response of the whole query, of the whole taxonomy tree, and then send it back so that it doesn't go into the different resolvers or APIs, and probably store it in a Redis or a Memcache version of it. So sounds good, right? Now we introduce like a bigger feature, or like a powerful feature now, and this is nothing but using persisted queries. So again, the same concept of caching full queries, but instead of sending the whole query from the client side, we only send a SHA-256 or some kind of a hash, so that you don't actually increase the payload. And what it actually means is you can send the SHA value to a CDN or something like a cache which is sitting in between your GraphQL layer and your APIs, or like between client and the GraphQL layer also. And then if the value is found in the cache, it will simply return it. If it is not found, it will actually go through a normal flow of doing it. Okay, so it looks like you used like everything. We have done like few things into it. Let's see, did it work? So this was our stitched up version, which took like 1.45 seconds. And these are our cached versions. So we started from using data loaders, we did like query caching, and then in the end we also implemented CDN caching, and it looks like it really worked. It has brought down our time to around 216 milliseconds. And then why I encourage caching is like, caching is nothing but a simple function, something like a getter or setter, and then you have in-memory cache. This can be anything like Redis or different things, but yeah, these all solutions really work. Okay, nice and easy. Let's move on to the next topic of the checklist, which is like security and how do you protect your application from different attacks. So security vulnerabilities are seen when you don't follow the principle of YAGNI. YAGNI stands for you aren't going to need it, which actually means like you end up exposing data which is not required. Second part being authorization is not implemented. This comes with the concept of viewer. And the third part, which is like a quite exploited one in a GraphQL world, is of using like allowing DDoSing of queries, which kind of breaks your entire network or like entire application. So let's see what you shouldn't be doing to avoid all this. So first part, let's say you were a team which was using APIs, and you had a Swagger version of these APIs, and you thought, let's move on to GraphQL, and you kind of use a tool called SwagQL, which kind of converted everything into schemas, but it also exposed few things such as the social security number, or like probably a thing which you didn't want to expose. So please be careful while using schema builders. And I would probably recommend like don't use them, build your schemas from the scratch. Second part, which is like vulnerabilities to your viewer concept, is nothing but allowing introspection query. Introspection query is a powerful feature of GraphQL and is used during development stages, but you should not be allowing it in a production mode. And the third part, which you already talked about, is like allowing nested queries. So let's say reviews, which look for review for, which also look for reviews, and so on. This is really bad. Instead, what you should be doing is this first part, disable GraphQL introspection. And it's like most frameworks such as Apollo kind of disable it on their own in the production mode. But if you are willing to do it on your own, it's nothing but there is a really good package known as GraphQL disable introspection. What it will do is it will simply respond with an error if someone tries to send this query. Second part being implementing authorization. Now there are two types to it. First part being denying the whole schema. And let's say there is some attacker or there is an unknown user which you don't want to enter into a network stage. You can simply throw an authentication error from the context part of the request, and that can be usually done by using like authentication methods or token methods. Second part being, let's say you want to divide users between admin and normal users. So let's say admin users can use or like view the user generated model. You can filter out the data models based on it and then allow users onto it. And the third part, which is nothing but how do you prevent DDoSing of queries, is like using a rate limiting feature. And what I mean by rate limiting is you kind of evaluate cost for different nodes of your request. Now this is kind of a tricky concept, but people what usually do is like if there is a nesting, the cost increases to 100th level and then so on. So let's say if you're fetching like first 100 posts and there is a nesting going on, you can attach cost to it, and you put a threshold saying users are not allowed to send queries which are having threshold beyond 50. So in that case, you simply deny it saying, oh, you're already doing DDoS, and this kind of prevents us well. Okay, so scale done, security done. Now we are kind of moving into an important concept of how do you manage or how do you decouple your schemas or architecture so that you can also support scale or like unexpected scenarios in the future, something like a COVID situation or something like people buying panically, etc. And a quite a big disclaimer to this, I would want to introduce saying the way we are doing right now is kind of not we should do. The concept of using schema stitching, which we'll discuss now, is kind of an old, and we should not be doing it. Oh, so what we should be doing it now. So let's take an example. Let's say you wanted to design for scale, and by that what I mean is, let's say we are having the YT Summit application, and you started with talks, speakers, and reviews and external login. But what if you want to extend it to a level where you support regional events, you support yearly events, also like event editions, let's say YT Summit for 2020, 2021, etc. You see like the scale is going really big, and people will actually feel like, okay, there is an app, why don't you support it for different editions? Similarly, a concept with e-commerce websites. So e-commerce kind of starts with user product stores, it grows to orders, clients, reviews, but then it kind of explodes at the situation which is actually important, which is nothing but offers and using like buying limits, which using like big billion days and anything like that. So the concept which we are using right now was like schema stitching. And what we actually did was we kind of divided things based on how they were into the APIs. So let's say we had a API for user, we had APIs for product, we had API for reviews, and then we kind of stitch this together. So let's say user had reviews, which is stitched to this property of property here. There were like recent purchases, which were kind of stitched to the product one here, and the product were also stitched to reviews. But this is kind of getting a complex for us, for developers, for different people to scale it. And by what I mean is this stitch version is not we should be using. Instead, we should be using a federated schema design. Now, this is a new concept developed by Apollo, and it's kind of getting a good hits. People are kind of using it. People are kind of liking it. And what it actually says is you divide your schemas into different services. So let's say product service, review service, inventory service, and then there will be a gateway which will kind of take into action of kind of stitching everything up and then serving whatever node you want. Now let's take an example. So this was our example of using schema stitching. What it actually means in a federated design world is user will stay like this. Product will have property named as user, and then you can actually include the property of recent purchases, which should be product. So let's say you want a product which you want to know a user which purchased this product and also like other products. You can use this type of feature. Similarly, like you have a review which will have user and product, and then what it actually means is our user service need not to know about products and reviews. Product need not to know about reviews and user, and then so on for reviews. So let's see how it does with our YT Summit app. So this will be our speaker node in this case. And if you notice here, there is nothing more rather than it also introducing the two fields of exposing the speaker node. This is our talk field where we have query, we had talk, and then we kind of use this extended type of speaker. Now Apollo will know how this is used based on the key fields which are using here. And then if you want to expose like the ID or name of speaker in the talk field, you can expose it in this way. Now let's see how the review would stitch up. So this is our like speaker node. This is our review node. And okay, going back to speaker, nothing has changed here. Coming to the review node, we have introduced a new type of talk. And the only thing which we need to do, which we need to change for the talk is nothing but exposes in this way. So sounds good, right? Very less number of changes. It works seamlessly and whatnot. So this is nothing but our look. This will look like of our talk node right now. Another example, probably we'll do a case study. So let's say on the talk page, you wanted to include a block field, and which is nothing but a complete block, and you want to list the block into the same page. Now, what it usually mean in a schema stitching world is you introduce the block field to a speaker itself, because block kind of connects to a speaker. But instead, in a federated design, what will actually mean is you kind of extend the speaker type and then introduce a block field which is not external, because you're only using it for a talk, and it is not defined anywhere else. Okay, and then you will ask me like how the resolvers will work. So the code for extended type of block will only lie inside the talk resolver, and we can use something like get blocks of speaker, which is like the underlying implementation of the API. All right, so doing a quick recap, we talked about scaling, securing, and managing. Scaling and securing are quite easy ones, quite straightforward ones. We should do it using like caching techniques and different techniques we discussed in security part. However, for the managing part, we should really think about, should we use schema stitching or use federated schemas, and then make our design foolproof and like make it work for like different areas. Okay, that kind of brings us to the end of the talk. I am now open to questions, and you can find me here.
Thanks, Saurabh. That was really good. We do have a couple of minutes for any questions. I see one from Nishid, Saurabh. It says, does federated schema follow microservices principles? If so, why not you just use REST directly?
Yeah, so you're right. Federated design is nothing but using microservices principles, but it kind of allows you to also have the feature of using a data aggregator inside the gateway layer. And it is nothing but you will kind of end up using GraphQL and also like the microservices out of it. So it's kind of using both. And then it supports well, so that like if you already have teams using different services for like microservice architecture, those teams can kind of jump up into creating a GraphQL schema or GraphQL layer for each of the API in that case. I hope I could answer it.
Yep. Great. Thank you so much, Saurabh, for this. I hope you'll join us in the network lounge, where people will connect with you for any follow-up questions that they have. And here is the QR code for Saurabh's session. I hope you guys are able to see this. Right. So I'll catch you all later. Thank you.